Hi, I'm Spence, owner and founder of Minturn Whisky Company. Today we're going to walk through a little bit of a flight tasting with our three whiskeys. So we have our blended malt, our single malt, and our peated malt. And the difference between those is they're all 100% barley. Our blended malt on your left is aged in new oak barrels. Our single malt is aged in used oak barrels, and then our peated malt, the barley has been smoked over a peat fire. And we'll get a little bit in more of those differences as we go through them. But first, we're going to talk about tasting them. So we have them lined up. Feel free to have a pen or a pencil in your hand, and we can make notes on the things that we see, the things that we smell, the things that we taste. The way that I start tasting is most of our taste is through our nose. So we're going to smell the whiskey, but we don't want to stick our nose all the way in the glass right away because it'll blow out our nostrils, and then we won't be able to taste very much. So we're just going to kind of pass it by and take a small sniff. And then the second time, now that our nose is getting a little bit more used to it, we can kind of get a little bit deeper into it. And then that third time, we're going to really get our nose in there. And we can start to smell those flavors. So it's brand new oak, so we're getting a lot of that oak flavors. And I say oak flavors. For me, that means a little bit of that dryness. And then the honey, the vanilla from the way that the spirits interact with that new oak barrel has a lot to give the whiskey. A little bit of berries in there, a little bit of a sweetness, also to honey. But again, there's no wrong answers. It's how we perceive these flavors and how we translate them to our own experiences. So just because I'm tasting berry honey or smelling berry honey and vanilla does not mean that that's what you're going to smell. But as long as you kind of identify them, you can write them down, and then we can go from there. And then you can identify what you like, what you don't like, and how you think of those flavors. So I like to swirl it, get a little bit of that aeration that gives a little bit more flavor or more scent. And I'm having a hard time identifying that flavor that I just smelled, but we're going to start tasting it. So yeah, a lot of what I'm tasting is that oak. Again, that smell that we had came right through. I'm getting a lot of honey, a lot of vanilla, a little bit of chocolate on the back end from that Colorado barley. And then we're going to move on to our single malt. And if you said that was, yep, tastes like whiskey, once we start tasting the back to back, they're all going to taste like whiskey, but they're going to have a little bit of different flavors. And tasting one night, tasting it the next night, we're not really going to notice as much as when we go right back to back. So we'll get right into the single malt. And this one is aged in used oak barrels, which lets the whiskey or the malt or the barley come through a little bit more. It imparts less of that oak into the whiskey. That barrel has less to give because it's been used up already. And this is an ex-bourbon cask. And I'm not getting as much sweetness from this one. I'm getting a lot more of that tobacco, that leather from that malt. And then when we let it coat our throat, we get that mouthfeel, that oiliness, and I get a little bit less of the tobacco and I get a little bit more of the nuttiness, whether it's peanut, sesame. Delicious is what it is. And then now I'm in my role or in my groove, so we're going right on to the peated to try to compare these. So this one, the barley's been smoked over a peat fire. And that smoke and that earthiness really comes through in the whiskey. So we get a little bit of iodine, we get that earthiness from that bog. Peat is a moss that grows over in Scotland, Ireland, Canada, and a little bit of the Pacific Northwest of the United States. This is this is Scottish barley that's been peated over in Scotland, and then we import it, and the whiskey's made from that. It's more approachable if you've had a Lefroy, if you've had something more heavily peated. There's one called Peat Monster. You can guess what that one tastes like. This one's a little bit more approachable. So if you're not the biggest fan of smoke, this one has a little bit of a more gentler smoke to it. And we get that caramel, we get that, I say iodine, it's a little bit of the earthiness, and then we get that smoke right when it hits the back of our throat. And then we can kind of go back through. Now that we've still got some left in our whiskey, we can add a little bit of a water droplet to all of these, and we can see how that has changed the flavor. So the water is going to break the whiskey. It's going to release a little bit more of aroma to our nostrils, and it kind of opens up our palate. So I'm going to go back to the blended malt, and then we'll see how that compares to the peat, but also with the water droplets. It's a little bit gentler on the nose, a little bit less of that oak. It kind of gives me more of those floral notes we tasted a little bit earlier. And it's starting to go from that honey sweetness to a little bit more of a brown sugar type of sweetness, for me anyway. Again, there's no wrong answers. Feel free to kind of go back and forth, enjoy your tasting, write some notes down if you feel like it, and enjoy your whiskey. Thanks for joining me. Salanja.